the first time I realized something was wrong, I was standing at my own kitchen counter, trying to sign my name, and my hand was shaking so badly I had to put the pen down and start again. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of quiet morning that used to feel peaceful to me. The light was coming through the window over the sink, and the coffee maker had just clicked off. I had the electric bill in front of me, my reading glasses low on my nose, and Robert's old checkbook open to a blank page. I hadn't written a check in a long time. Almost 2 years, actually. Everything had been handled online, as my daughter liked to say. Bills, insurance, taxes, all of it. Every time I asked about something, she would say, "Mom, don't worry about that. We already took care of it." At first it sounded like love, like help, like I was lucky to have a daughter who cared enough to handle the hard parts of life for me. But that morning, standing at the counter, pen in hand, I realized I didn't know how much money was in my account. I didn't know which bills were paid. I didn't know the password to my own bank login. I didn't even know which credit card was connected to which account anymore. I wrote the date slowly at the top of the check. My handwriting looked older than I remembered, smaller, more careful, like I was trying not to make a mistake. When I got to the bottom and signed my name, Helen Morris, I had this strange feeling that I was practicing a signature instead of using my own. I stood there for a long moment looking at that name, and a thought came into my mind so quietly it almost felt like someone else had said it. Everything in my life still had my name on it, but I was no longer the one in charge of any of it. And that was the morning I decided I needed to understand exactly when that had happened. My name is Helen Morris. I'm 67 years old, and for most of my adult life, I worked as a secretary at a public elementary school just outside Pittsburgh. It was the kind of job where you knew a little bit about everything: attendance records, lunch accounts, field trip forms, emergency contact cards, budget requests, supply orders. I wasn't important in the way the principal or teachers were important, but I was the person who knew where things were, how things worked, and what needed to be signed before anything could move forward. I spent 30 years making sure paperwork was correct, deadlines were met, and nothing slipped through the cracks. I was married to my husband Robert for 38 years. He was an electrician, quiet, steady, and very organized when it came to money. Every Sunday evening, after dinner, he would sit at the kitchen table with an old brown ledger and the checkbook, and he would write everything down in small, neat handwriting. Electric bill, water bill, groceries, gas, church donation. He believed in knowing exactly where things stood. Sometimes I would sit across from him with a cup of tea and watch him work. Every once in a while, he would slide the checkbook across the table toward me and say, "You should always know where everything is, Helen. Not because something bad will happen, but because life is easier when you understand your own life." At the time, I used to laugh and tell him that was his department, not mine. He would just smile and say, "One day it'll all be your department." After Robert passed away, that ledger stayed in the bottom drawer of the kitchen cabinet. I couldn't bring myself to open it for a long time. It felt like opening it would make everything too real. So when my daughter Lisa started coming over and saying, "Mom, let me help you organize everything," I was relieved. Lisa has always been the capable one. She's efficient, organized, good with computers, good with forms and phone calls, and all the things that start to feel heavier as you get older. Her husband Brian runs a small contracting business, and they're both used to managing a lot of moving parts in their own lives. At first, her help was a blessing. She helped me set up online bill pay so I wouldn't have to write checks. She said paper bills were easy to lose, and this way everything would be automatic. Then she said it would be smart if she had access to my accounts in case something happened to me and bills needed to be paid quickly. Then she said we should talk to someone about putting the house into a trust so that everything would be easier later and we wouldn't have to deal with probate. I remember sitting at the dining room table while she spread papers out in front of me, explaining things quickly, pointing to the lines where I needed to sign. "Mom, this is just paperwork," she said. "It doesn't change anything right now. It just makes things easier for the future." I signed because I trusted her. I signed because I was tired of dealing with paperwork. I signed because she sounded like she knew what she was doing, and I didn't want to feel like I was slowing her down by asking too many questions. Looking back now, I can see that was the moment my life started moving out of my hands and into someone else's. But at the time, it didn't feel like losing control. It felt like being taken care of. The first real sign that something had changed was the mail. It happened slowly, the way most important changes happen. Not all at once, not with an announcement, just small differences that were easy to explain away if you didn't look too closely. I used to get mail every day. Bank statements, insurance letters, property tax notices, catalogues. I never remembered ordering but somehow kept receiving. After Lisa started organizing everything, the mail started getting thinner. Some days there was nothing at all. Other days, Lisa would come in carrying a small stack of envelopes and say, "These are just things that needed signatures." And she would hand me a pen before I even opened them. "Mum, it's just routine stuff," she would say. Insurance updates, bank forms, nothing important. I started signing things the way you sign for a package, quickly, automatically, without thinking. I told myself that if something were really important, she would explain it. One afternoon, I decided I wanted to check my bank account myself. Not because I didn't trust Lisa, but because Robert's voice had been in my head lately, the way it sometimes is when you're washing dishes or folding laundry. "You should always know where everything is, Helen." I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and typed in the bank website. I entered the username I had used for years, then my password. Incorrect password. I tried again, slower this time, pressing each key carefully. Incorrect password. I waited a few minutes and tried one more time, thinking maybe I was just nervous and typing too fast. Incorrect password. I called Lisa and said, "I think the bank website is broken. My password isn't working." She didn't sound concerned. "Oh, we changed the password a few months ago when we were organizing everything. It was part of the security update. Don't worry about logging in, Mom. If you need anything, just call me and I'll take care of it." I remember sitting there with the laptop open, looking at the screen that said, "Incorrect password," and feeling something I couldn't quite name at the time. It wasn't anger. It felt more like being locked out of a room in your own house. Another small thing happened at the grocery store a few weeks later. I was in line with a cart full of groceries when my card was declined. The cashier tried it again, and it was declined again. I could feel the people behind me starting to shift and sigh, the way people do when a line stops moving. I stepped aside and called Lisa. "Oh, that's probably because we moved money between accounts," she said. "Just use the other card." I stood there holding my wallet, looking at 3 different cards, and realized I didn't know which one was connected to which account anymore. It's a strange feeling when you need instructions to use your own money. The moment that finally made everything clear didn't happen at the bank or the grocery store. It happened at a doctor's appointment. The receptionist handed me a clipboard and said, "Can you confirm your emergency contact and medical decision maker?" I said, "That's me. I make my own decisions." She looked at her screen and then back at me and said gently, "It says here your daughter has medical power of attorney." I actually laughed a little because I thought she must be looking at the wrong file. "That can't be right," I said. "I never did that." She turned the screen slightly so I could see it. There was my name, and under it was Lisa's name, listed as the person who could make medical decisions for me if something happened. "There should be a copy of the document in your file," she said. "You signed it last year." I did recognize the signature, but I did not remember signing that paper. I drove home that day with the radio off, just listening to the sound of the tires on the road. When I got home, I walked down the driveway and opened the mailbox myself, instead of waiting for Lisa to bring the mail inside, like she usually did. There were only advertisements and a grocery flyer inside. No bank statements, no insurance letters, nothing important. I stood there, holding that small stack of paper, and realized I didn't know where my important mail was going anymore. I locked the mailbox again and slipped the key into my pocket instead of hanging it back on the hook by the door. That small metal key felt heavier than it used to, and for the first time, I allowed myself to ask a question I had been avoiding for a long time. When did I stop being the person in charge of my own life? The next morning, I went to the bank by myself. I didn't tell Lisa I was going. I didn't tell anyone. I just woke up early, made coffee, put on a decent blouse, and drove to the branch I had been using for years. Back when Robert was still alive, and we used to go there together on Friday afternoons, the bank looked exactly the same. Same carpet, same counters, same line of chairs along the wall. It smelled faintly, like printer ink and floor cleaner, the way banks always seem to smell. I waited my turn, and then sat down across from a young man who introduced himself as Daniel and asked how he could help me. I said, I'd like to review all my accounts. All of them. And I'd like printed copies. He asked for my ID, typed on his computer for a few minutes, and then walked to the printer and came back with a thick stack of papers. He laid them neatly on the desk between us. We went through them slowly. He showed me my checking account first. It was now a joint account with Lisa. Then he showed me a trust account that had most of my savings in it. Then he showed me paperwork for a home equity line of credit attached to my house. I remember stopping him and saying, I'm sorry, what is this line of credit? He said, it's a revolving credit line secured by your home. According to the documents, it was opened last year. Last year? I said. I don't remember opening that. He turned one of the pages toward me and pointed to the bottom. That's your signature, correct? I looked down, and there it was. My name, written in my own handwriting. Helen Morris. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, not pain exactly, just a kind of heaviness. We kept going through the papers. Then he showed me the trust documents. My house had been transferred into a family trust. Lisa and Brian were listed as co-trustees. The trust owned the house now, and the trustees managed the trust. I said very slowly, so I still own my house, right? He chose his words carefully. The trust owns the house, and you are the beneficiary of the trust. And who controls the trust? The trustees do. And that's my daughter and her husband. Yes, ma'am. I sat there looking at the papers for a long time. The room felt very quiet, even though I could hear people talking at other desks and the printer running somewhere behind me. So let me make sure I understand, I said finally. Everything still has my name on it, but I can't make decisions about it by myself anymore. He hesitated, then nodded slightly. According to these documents, major decisions would be made by the trustees. I looked down at the stack of papers again, at my own signature appearing over and over at the bottom of pages I did not remember reading. And in that moment, something became very clear to me. No one had stolen anything from me. No one had broken into my accounts or forged my name. I had signed my life into a system I did not understand because I trusted the people sitting at my dining room table. I gathered the papers into a neat stack and put them into my purse. My hands were very steady by then. Thank you for explaining this to me, I said. When I walked out of the bank, the air felt colder than it had when I walked in. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. I wasn't angry yet. I was awake. And once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep and pretend you don't see what's happening. Once I understood what had happened, I didn't rush home and confront Lisa. I didn't call her from the bank parking lot, and I didn't cry in the car the way I probably would have a few years earlier. Instead, I went home, made myself a sandwich, and sat at the kitchen table with Robert's old ledger in front of me for the first time since he died. It was exactly where I had left it, in the bottom drawer of the kitchen cabinet. The cover was worn at the corners, and when I opened it, I saw his handwriting small, neat numbers and notes in blue ink. Electric bill, water bill, groceries, gas, little pieces of our life, written down line by line. I ran my hand over the page for a moment and then said out loud, even though no one else was in the house, "Okay, Robert, I think it's my turn now." The next day, I called the lawyer whose name the banker had given me and made an appointment. I told Lisa I had a doctor's appointment because I wasn't ready to explain everything yet. I wanted to understand my situation completely before I started any difficult conversations. The lawyer was a woman about my age, with grey hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She read through my documents slowly, turning pages, making notes, occasionally asking me a question about when something had been signed or what I had been told at the time. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You didn't lose your assets, but you did give up control. The good news is, you are still legally competent and alive, which means most of this can be changed if you want it to be." I remember letting out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "What would you do if you were me?" I asked her. She smiled slightly and said, "I would decide how much help I want from my family and how much control I want to keep for myself. Those are two different things, but people often confuse them." Over the next few weeks, I did several things quietly and carefully. I opened a new bank account in my name only and arranged for my pension to be deposited there instead of into the joint account Lisa had access to. I revoked the medical power of attorney and replaced it with a document that required my consent unless I was truly unable to make decisions. I froze the home equity line of credit so no more money could be borrowed against the house. I started the legal process to revoke the trust and transfer the house back into my name. I updated my will so that Lisa would still inherit the house and what was left of my savings someday, but she would not control those things while I was still alive. When I got home after signing those papers at the lawyer's office, I took out the checkbook and wrote a check for the electric bill. It felt like a small thing, but it wasn't. When I signed my name at the bottom of that check, I noticed my handwriting looked smaller than it used to. Careful, like I was trying to stay inside the lines. I sat there for a long time looking at that signature. It's a strange thing, a signature. It's just a name written in ink, but it can give away a house, a bank account, or your right to make your own decisions. I had given away a lot with my signature because I trusted the people sitting across from me at my own table. Now, for the first time in a long time, I was using it to take responsibility for my own life again. And I did all of this without raising my voice, without accusing anyone, and without telling Lisa what I was doing. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I wanted to make sure that when we finally talked, I was not asking for my life back. I was already holding it. The conversation with Lisa didn't happen in my kitchen, and it didn't happen over the phone. I asked her to meet me at the lawyer's office on a Thursday morning. I told her there were some documents I needed to go over and that it would be easier if we did it there. She sounded a little worried on the phone. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "Everything is fine. I just need to understand some things, and I'd like you to be there." When she walked into the conference room and saw me sitting at the table with a folder in front of me and the lawyer sitting beside me, I could see the confusion on her face immediately. "Mom, what's going on?" she asked, sitting down slowly. The lawyer spoke first. She explained calmly and professionally that I had decided to revoke the trust, cancel the joint account arrangements, revoke the power of attorney, and transfer the house and accounts back into my sole control. She explained that new documents had been prepared and that from now on, I would be managing my own finances and property again. Lisa looked at me like I had said something in a language she didn't understand. "Mom, why would you do this?" she said. "We were helping you. We were trying to make things easier for you." I nodded because I knew she believed that. I know you thought you were helping, I said. And at the beginning, you were. I was overwhelmed after your father died, and I needed help. But somewhere along the way, help turned into control, and I stopped being the person responsible for my own life. Brian leaned forward in his chair. This affects our business, Helen, he said. We used that line of credit to get through slow months. We were going to pay it back. I looked at him and said, very calmly, you should never build a business that depends on someone else's house without telling them. He opened his mouth to respond, but then closed it again. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. You don't trust us, she said quietly. I thought about that question for a long moment before answering. It's not about trust, I said. It's about responsibility. This is my life, and I gave away responsibility for it because I thought that was easier for everyone. But I'm still alive, Lisa. And as long as I am alive, I want to be the one who signs my name, pays my bills, and decides what happens to my house. The lawyer slid a set of papers across the table toward me. These are the revocation documents, she said. If you're sure this is what you want to do, you can sign here. I picked up the pen and looked down at the paper. My hand shook a little. Not because I was afraid of Lisa or Brian, and not because I didn't understand what I was signing. My hand was shaking because it had been a long time since I had signed something that I had actually read and fully understood. I signed my name slowly and carefully. Helen Morris. Then I put the pen down and looked at my daughter. I'm not taking anything away from you, I said gently. You will still inherit what I leave you one day. But while I am alive, I want to be responsible for my own life. That's not punishment. That's adulthood. Lisa wiped her eyes and nodded, but she didn't say anything for a while. Finally, she said very softly, I didn't realize you felt like we took your life away. I said, you didn't take it all at once. We all gave it away slowly because it was easier. And that was the moment everything changed. Not because of the papers, and not because of the lawyer. Because for the first time in a long time, I was speaking as the person in charge of my own life. Things were quiet for a while after that meeting. Lisa didn't come over as often, and when she did, she called first instead of just walking in. Brian was polite when I saw him, but more formal than he used to be, like he wasn't quite sure what role he was supposed to play anymore. I didn't blame either of them. I think they were embarrassed, and I think they were also worried about money. The truth is, they had built parts of their life around the assumption that my house and my savings were something they could manage and use if they needed to. When I took back control, I changed their plans as much as I changed my own. But something else happened too, something much more important than the awkwardness. I started doing things for myself again. I logged into my own bank account with a password I created and wrote down in Robert's old ledger. I paid my own electric bill. I called the insurance company myself when I had a question. I opened my own mail every afternoon and sorted it at the kitchen table. I balanced my checkbook on Sunday evenings the way Robert used to, writing everything down line by line. The first time I paid all my bills by myself again, I made a cup of tea and sat at the table for a long time, just looking at the checkbook and the ledger. It wasn't about the money. It was about understanding my own life again, knowing what was coming in, what was going out, and what everything meant. I also signed up for a class at the community center called Online Banking and Personal Finance Basics. I was easily the oldest person in the room, and the instructor was young enough to be my granddaughter, but I didn't care. I took notes, asked questions, and learned how to check my accounts online without asking anyone else to do it for me. One evening, a few months later, Lisa came over and knocked on the front door instead of using her key. That was a small thing, but it meant something to me. When I opened the door, she said, "Hi, Mom. Do you have time for coffee?" We sat at the kitchen table and talked for a long time, not about money or documents, but about how easy it is for families to slide into patterns where one person takes over and the other person slowly disappears, without anyone really meaning for that to happen. I really thought I was helping you, she said. I know, I told her. But helping someone should not make them smaller. She nodded and looked around the kitchen like she was seeing it differently than she had before. And I realized that what I had done hadn't just changed my life. It had changed our relationship, not broken it, just made it more honest. I don't tell this story because I'm angry at my daughter. I'm not. And I don't tell it because I think my situation is unusual. The truth is, the lawyer told me she sees versions of this story all the time. Families trying to help, older parents feeling overwhelmed, paperwork getting signed too quickly, responsibilities quietly shifting from one person to another. What I learned is that losing control of your life rarely happens in one big moment. It happens in small, polite moments. It happens when you sign a paper because someone says, it's just routine. It happens when you stop opening your own mail. It happens when you stop checking your own bank account. It happens when you let someone else create your passwords, and then you never ask what they are. It happens when people start saying, don't worry about it, we'll handle it, and you say, okay, because you're tired, or grieving, or you just want things to be easier. And one day, you wake up and realize everything still has your name on it, but you are no longer the one making decisions. Getting control back wasn't about punishing anyone. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about remembering that being a mother, or a widow, or getting older does not mean you stop being an adult with your own responsibilities and rights. There's a difference between help and control. Help supports you. Control replaces you. I still love my daughter. I still see my grandchildren. I still help when I'm asked. But now I open my own mail. I read every document before I sign it, and I know exactly how much money is in my account and where it goes every month. The day I signed those revocation papers in the lawyer's office, my hand was shaking a little. Not because I was afraid of my daughter, and not because I didn't understand what I was signing. My hand was shaking because it had been a long time since I had signed something that I had actually read and fully understood. That was the moment I felt like myself again. So, if you take anything from this story,